we'll get started. So hello everybody and welcome to our Accessible Technology for Students webinar. I'm really pleased that you're able to join us today on this wet and windy day in spring. My name is Tara Chataway and I manage our student support service at Thomas Pocklington Trust, and I'll be delivering this workshop with my colleague Darren Pascal, who manages our technology service. We're really delighted that you're able to join us today. So how the format will work is I'll just give you a little bit of an update about our student support service and who we are and why we're here. And then I'll hand over to Darren, who is our tech expert, and he will be able to talk you through all things accessible technology related. If you have any questions, please put your questions into chat and our colleague Leanne Bennett will be monitoring the chat box. And then after Darren's presentation, she'll be reading out the questions and then Darren and I will be there to answer them. Please don't worry if you don't have your question answered. So it's the Q&A box. You have a Q&A box and then there's a chat box if you put it into the Q&A box. I've just been notified by my colleagues. And then Leanne will monitor those. If we don't get to answer your question, please don't worry because we will take all the questions away with us. This webinar is being recorded and we will have it hosted onto our web pages. We'll send you a link and we'll also have the answers to any of the questions you ask. So thank you again for joining us. So as I said, my name is Tara Chataway and I manage our student support service. And our student support service is there for anyone that's looking to get into or get the most out of further information or higher education or further education, so college and university. And so on our website, we have a whole host of information, resources, videos, case studies. Basically, you have a question, then hopefully we'll have the resource that will answer your question about university and college. We also have a dedicated support line that you can contact every Tuesday and Wednesday, and that's manned between 10 AM and 4 PM. And we also have a dedicated email box where you can email us with your query and then we will contact you and support you. We also have various networking opportunities. We've got a Facebook group for students and it's a great place for students to come together, ask questions, share information. And there's also professionals on the Facebook group that can also provide information and advice. All of the details on our service at the end of this slide and end of Darren's presentation and this presentation and will be available via a link and within the Q&A box and the chat box, and we'll also have it on the website afterwards. So I will be quiet now and hand over to Darren, who you've come to listen to hear about anything accessibly related. Please do keep your questions coming in. Thank you.
Thank you, Tara, and hi everybody. It's really, really exciting that we're doing this for Global Accessibility Awareness Day as well. And so what we're going to do is just have a very quick whistle-stop overview of some of the sorts of technology that you could be considering if you're a student with a vision impairment about to enter higher education or already at university. Some things we'll cover include, well, let's see if we move on to this, include basically a little bit of all of this. So magnification, we'll have a little look at things like portable magnifiers, magnification software, and multi-monitor setups. So the sorts of things that could be useful to help with studying and with productivity. We'll also have a look at some Braille options, so things like some equipment, single line refreshable Braille display equipment, and indeed multi-line refreshable Braille display equipment. We'll talk more about that shortly. We'll also have a little look at screen readers, so free screen readers, built-in screen readers, professional screen readers. We'll go through some of those options that are available. And in terms of general productivity, we'll have a look at one or two little hints and tips that could be useful. For instance, browser bookmark syncing. We'll talk more about that shortly. And we'll kind of round off by having a little look at some of the apps that could be useful and indeed services that are available to help you with settling in to your new accommodation and being part of a new area, exploring the surroundings of your new town, city environment. Are there apps available to help with all of that sort of thing? There certainly are. So we'll go through some of those. And what I would say is that, as Tara has mentioned, the links, there are links available to download both the slideshow that we're looking at on screen at the moment, and also a document that has a lot of these resources properly linked. So for instance, where you may mention of a supplier in the document, it's actually linked to their website. But don't worry about that now, because everything, certainly in both of these things, I'm going to talk through as we go. So let's begin with having a look at magnification and multi-monitor setups. Now, this is one of these things that on the face of it sounds really quite simple, because obviously one of the side effects, or indeed kind of issues that you might run into when you've got magnification software going is having more limited space, because if you're making a section of your screen larger, then by definition you can't display quite as much information on the equipment that you've got available. So having a multi-monitor setup actually can make an awful lot of sense. It can be particularly useful, say in a research setting, if you are referencing some materials. Perhaps you've got, say, a book or a paper open on one screen, and then on the other, perhaps you've got a document open where you're making notes or noting down cross-references. So it can be really helpful to kind of give you the opportunity to divide your work into across screens, so that you can kind of really focus on what matters to you. Now, of course, this does depend on actually having more than one screen. The good news is that monitor technology in general, the price of a standard flat screen monitor these days is considerably less than, in fact, it's probably about as affordable as it's ever been. And this is exactly the sort of question that can be addressed when you have your disabled student allowance needs assessment. So well worth considering there. As for built-in magnification, so there is now an awful lot of accessible software that just comes with pretty much any device that you might care to acquire or indeed mention at the moment. This certainly hasn't always been the case, but these days you could pick up any tablet, any computer, or any phone, and they will all come with magnification features as standard. So the Windows magnifier software that's built into Windows 10, it's actually pretty good. You've got zoom levels. It can support magnification of up to 16 times, which is pretty substantial. There was a time when free magnification software couldn't even manage half of that. And there are also plenty of options to help with very basic features such as cursor tracking. Now, as for what's available, it will depend on the device that you have access to. And also there can be considerable variance, because just because there is a feature available in the latest version of Windows 10, that doesn't necessarily mean that every Windows computer that you may have access to will have will have all of these features. So this is exactly the sort of thing that a bit of trial and error, certainly if you are looking to access computers in a communal environment such as a library or a lab. It's the sort of thing that you'll find out pretty much by trying. But on the upside, this is also where having a good relationship with all of those at your university can help with this, because it's up to universities to make sure that that you have reasonable access to all of the materials that you need. Now, Zoom text, we're getting into the realms of kind of more professional magnification software here. We're talking about Zoom Text, and indeed Supernova. I'm going to concentrate more on the Zoom Text side of things, simply because recently, Thomas Boppington Trust, we've actually published, thanks to an intern working in my team, Jordan, he's put together a very good overview of the sorts of features that are actually available in Zoom Text. So I mentioned the zoom level available in the built-in Windows magnification software on Windows 10 that can go up to 16 times. Well, Zoom Text can actually go up to 60 times. I did say that right, 60 times. A phenomenal amount of flexibility there. And it's also got some very well refined smoothing technology. And by that, I mean that when you and you may well have spotted this with, say, zooming into photos at quite a high level, the more that you magnify something, the more chance that there is that it will kind of appear pixelated and grainy. And this is where having dedicated magnification software can really come into its own, because when you're looking at magnified text, you want to be able to concentrate on the text. You don't want the view that you're seeing to distract you from what you're seeing. So the smoothing technology that's built into more professional software can really help with that, so enabling you to kind of concentrate on exactly what it is that you need to look at and to work on to get your work done. So moving on now from magnification software to magnification hardware, portable magnification devices. Now, I'm going to give a couple of examples here, but the truth is that there are a plethora of devices out there on the market, probably hundreds of them. So what we're going to do initially is to give you a sort of idea of the sorts of things to expect. Now, I'm sure that many of you will already be familiar with this sort of thing, especially if magnification equipment is something that you have been using for quite a while. You'll already be familiar with quite a lot of this. Let's start with talking about the form factors. So you can get magnification equipment of pretty much all shapes and sizes. Now, we're going to kind of concentrate very briefly here on video magnification equipment. So for instance, you can get something like, say, a Ruby, which starts at just over a 4-inch diagonal screen. It's very portable, very easy to carry around, but it's got a small screen. So clearly, the larger the screen, the more that you'll be able to benefit from the magnification capabilities built into the device. Now, on the slide, I've put a note here that says 4 to 10-inch screens. Well, in truth, you could actually expand that significantly. There are 16-inch and indeed larger devices available as well, depending on your needs. Clearly, the larger that the screen of the magnification equipment that we're talking about, probably the less portable it's going to be. But one example of some equipment that I know one of my colleagues is using at the moment is from Optilec. It's their compact HD 10. So it's got a 10-inch screen. It's also got 3 different cameras on there. So it's got the ability to enable you to practice or indeed concentrate on, say, documents or something on a desk. And there's also a camera that will let you look at short distance objects and things that might be slightly further away as well. And you also have the ability to totally customize the view. So some of these magnifiers will have cameras on arms that will actually let you be completely flexible in terms of pointing the camera to focus on exactly the material or the object or whatever it is that you're looking to examine more closely. There are also a range of these magnification products that have built-in speech features as well. They don't necessarily come as standard, but if having the ability to hear text read out to you while potentially looking at it in a magnified view, if that's the sort of thing in a dedicated device that isn't a computer that would be important to you, then it's definitely worth mentioning with a supplier when you talk to them. Now, we've mentioned some suppliers, For instance, I've already mentioned Optilec. There's Human Wear. I know many of you will already be familiar with their Prodigy Connect line of products and their Reveal products. Basically, there are so many options available that that we certainly do recommend that that you start a conversation with the supplier. Now, you don't actually have to be looking necessarily to buy this equipment. Some of these suppliers, particularly in the current kind of circumstances, are being very flexible in terms of being able to offer either remote training or remote demos, or in some instances, and again, it does depend on the supplier here, that they might be in a position to be able to loan you some equipment. Now, no guarantees with this, because clearly the way that suppliers operate is entirely down to them. But if it would be useful for you to have some hands-on time with any of this equipment, they can certainly arrange that. And we would highly recommend that you do that before committing to anything, because ultimately it's about you being comfortable with the equipment that you're going to be using to make the best of your studies. And I forgot to mention Vision Aid technology as well. So yes, there are plenty of suppliers. Okay, so let's have a little look at some of the Braille side of things. Now, I'm actually myself a Braille user, and if it wasn't for Braille, I would certainly be struggling with this presentation. So there are various different things that we could be looking at here. So the most common form of refreshable Braille, by that I mean a device that can show you in Braille in real time information that you might be viewing on a computer screen, on a phone, on a tablet, and allow you to not only read it, but to interact with it in some sort of meaningful way. You don't actually have to go to the extent of brailing out all of your equipment, or brailing out all of your documents and materials in advance. You can do that. There are certainly Braille printing equipment there, but refreshable Braille basically means that you can get Braille access to anything that any electronic text. Now, single line Braille is by far the most common of these refreshable kind of categories of equipment. They've been around for many decades, and a couple of examples that we've mentioned here. Brailliant, this is a family of products produced by Human Wear. Again, you'll recognize them, one of the suppliers that we mentioned in the previous slide when looking at Magnification software. They have recently actually overhauled their Brailliant line of displays, and they've got displays of varying sizes depending on your needs. There are some of us who like 20-cell equipment because it's nice and small and very portable, but equally the longer the line that you have on your single line Braille display, the more Braille you can actually read without having to refresh the display. So definitely worth trying to get hands-on time as much as you can with some of this stuff. I appreciate that that's certainly more challenging in the current climate, but well worth talking to all of these organizations. Now, another product family besides Brailliant is the Focus line of Braille display equipment. This is also pretty mature, and it's developed by the same company responsible for the JAWS and Zoom Text screen reader and Magnification software. So you've got a big advantage there in that a lot of the features available for anybody with access to a Focus Braille display have been designed with a screen reader user in mind. So there are tons of buttons on there and switches and options to help with moving by differing increments. In fact, it's so advanced to such an extent that you can actually, and this is true, in fact, with any single line Braille display equipment here, you can actually remotely control pretty much any equipment that you might want to pair it to. So for instance, there is a Braille display on the desk in front of me here. And if I wanted to, I could use that to drive this entire presentation. And this is true not only with Focus, it's true with any of the single line Braille displays that are available. They do tend to require you to use a screen reader at the same time, so we'll come on to that shortly. There's also Orbit Reader. Now, this is certainly evolving as well. It has been championed in this country by RNIB, and it is an attempt to try and make Braille display equipment more affordable, and actually they've done a pretty good job. It's really good now. You can pick up an Orbit Reader 20, so a 20 cell Braille display, and carry it around with you and use it to take notes on as well, for more like hundreds of pounds rather than thousands of pounds. Now, I'm going to briefly touch on multi-line Braille. This is also very much a new innovating area, if you like, of interest. There's currently one multi-line Braille display on the market, which is made by Bristol Braille Technology, the Canute 360. It is still very much at the early stages of its product life on the market. It was only officially released just over a year ago, about 18 months ago. And what this does is it allows you to look at more than one line of Braille at a time. So it could be particularly useful for looking at tabular data, things like, say, I don't know, periodic tables or Braille music scores, all sorts of things along those lines. Again, if you're interested in that, then Bristol Braille, well worth getting in touch with them. And of course, there are options for Braille printing and tactile graphics. This may be kind of more in the lines of the sorts of considerations applicable for somebody actually working in a university or education market as opposed to a student. But certainly there is equipment out there, and a lot of the suppliers, in fact, all of the suppliers that we've mentioned here, can advise on exactly what's possible with Braille equipment in terms of printing and tactile diagram production. Okay, let's move on. So I touched on screen readers already. Here are a few examples. So I've already mentioned JAWS when talking about the Focus Braille display equipment. JAWS also supports all of the, in fact, all of, certainly JAWS and NVDA support certainly the Orbit Reader and the Brilliant Braille display equipment. Both NVDA and JAWS support both of those. I think it's possible to use a Focus with NVDA as well, although I can't speak from experience there. It's certainly supported by JAWS, as you would expect. This is essentially the software that runs on a computer to enable you to access all of the information on a computer, or indeed a tablet or a smartphone, by speech output, or indeed Braille input or output. Supernova is also still available. Maybe not as widely used now as once it was. Partially this is because I think NVDA, now that it's the most popular screen reader, has to some extent gained a bit more popularity. And there's one really obvious reason why NVDA, which stands for non-visual desktop access, has gained the attraction that it has. And that is that it's free. So anybody with a Windows machine who might want to get access to a screen reader, go and download NVDA. And again, we've got links in the document that you can download to take you to that. Now, it's also worth mentioning that there are built-in screen readers as well. So, for instance, I know many of you will know already about this, on a Windows 10 machine, and I'm going to say Windows 10 because it was, even though Narrator, which is the screen reader that Microsoft developed for Windows machines, even though that has been around for a very long time, it's only really with Windows 10 that it's got to the sort of level where you can actually use it pretty reliably now. It supports web browsers, modern Edge and Chrome, and indeed even Firefox to some extent as well. So you can get by with very basic web browsing, and maybe a little bit more too with Narrator now. And since it's built into every Windows 10 machine, look for it whenever you find yourself sitting at a workstation computer. And in fact, you should be able to activate not only narrator, but Windows magnifier as well with a single keystroke. Again, details on how you can go about accessing all of these features are available from the articles that we've linked in the document. And of course, they're also built in screen readers pretty much on any smartphone or tablet as well. Of course, the most common, or indeed well-known, shall we say, of these is VoiceOver on the iPhone or iPad. But you've also got other examples such as VoiceView on the Amazon Fire tablet range, and TalkBack and several other screen readers also available on Android. So it's well worth having a look at the accessibility options on the device that you might have to hand. If you go into the settings app on whatever device it might be, search for accessible or accessibility, and you will probably find all sorts of things that could be of value to you. Now, I mentioned general productivity earlier. We've already touched on browsers a couple of times. Let's start, though, before we go into talking about browser syncing, by once again highlighting the excellent RNIB Bookshare collection. So this is the education collection of an incredible wealth of material that is available to all students. So if you are a student at all, then it's well worth checking with your institution if you can get access to RNIB Bookshare, or indeed how you go about getting access to it, because it should be available to every student in this country with a vision impairment. It's well worth doing. The collections on here are pretty vast. There's certainly no guarantee necessarily that the textbooks or materials that you're looking for will be on Bookshare, but it's always worth checking. They have hundreds of thousands of books on there, and it's available for free, as I say, to any student in this country with a vision impairment. So for more details, check out the RNIB Bookshare website. Again, we've linked to that in the document. Now, browser sync, I mentioned this because it might well be that you find yourself, say, sitting down at a workstation in a library. You know, back. Let's sort of fast forward a little bit to when campuses are reopened or functional for student activity in the sort of ways that that you would come to expect before any lockdown. But it's all very well having found something fantastic on a library machine. How do you then go about taking it away or being able to access it somewhere else? Well, one really convenient way that you can do that with is by making sure that you use browser bookmarks. Now, this will actually let you, certainly with the sync services now available with, say, a Microsoft account for somebody using Microsoft Edge, or a Google account for somebody in Chrome. This will actually mean that you can access the same set of bookmarks or browser settings across multiple devices. So this can be really handy because it basically means you can look at something that you've maybe found on a library machine and take it away with you and work on it in your own time back in your room. So definitely worth considering that sort of thing. Okay, so we now come on to the, so just bear with me a moment. Yes, the exciting, really exciting part of having campus life re-established once again, getting around and looking at apps that might be able to assist you with getting familiar with your environment. Now, again, this does definitely depend on the device that you have. If you've got any kind of smartphone, there are some of these apps that you'll be able to use and maybe some that you won't be able to. So it's well worth checking in terms of the App Store on an iPhone or the Play Store on an Android phone, exactly which of these apps that we've mentioned here. And this is just a very tiny subset. There are new mobility apps and maps apps coming online all the time. Now, we've mentioned here Microsoft Soundscape. This has been around for a number of years now. What's really nice about Soundscape is that not only does it actually tell you about buildings or shops or places of interest or anything that could be very close by, but it actually gives you a feel for exactly where they are, because whenever it tells you, say, there's a coffee shop 50 yards on your right, you will hear it on your right. Now, of course, this does depend on you having access to a suitable headset to be able to do this. And we highly recommend that for anybody who's actually doing this and looking to use Soundscape, that you look at the options available with something like, say, bone conduction headsets, because this will make it a little bit easier for you to also remain aware of what's going on around you at the same time. But it's free, so it's certainly the app is. Headsets, they tend to be available for around about 50, 60 pounds and upwards. But there are many different providers of bone conducting headsets now, and you can find them pretty much on any electronic marketplace. Now, I mentioned here location sharing. I guess kind of thinking about maybe meeting up with friends, or maybe it's a case of wanting to kind of check in with friends or family so that they know that you're safe. Every smartphone platform will enable you to do this if you so desire. Now, of course, it's totally up to you as a user of any of these smartphone platforms, exactly what you share with whom and when and how much. So the obvious examples here, I've mentioned Google Maps and Apple Maps. The advantage of Google Maps is that it's available pretty much on anything, because you can access it through the web, and there are also dedicated Google Maps apps available on both the two main smartphone and tablet platforms. Now, Lazarillo, this is a very interesting app. It's also free and well worth a look. This is another app that has been developed especially with blind and partially sighted people in mind. So some of the information that it provides about places of interest is actually in a little bit more detail. It will, for instance, give you an idea of any street intersections that you're getting close to. Since it's free, it's well worth looking at. There are actually times I find when I'm walking around cities, I quite often have more than one of these apps open at once, because sometimes you want to be able to get a range of information that perhaps one app on its own won't necessarily be able to provide. So well worth experimenting with this and trying out a few things. And what's really nice about a lot of these apps, in fact, I think every one that we've mentioned up to this point, they're freely available. So they're there for you to try if you have access to any kind of smartphone. Now, public transport, just very briefly here, if you're looking to plan a journey around buses or trains, coaches, anything of that sort, you can certainly do that really easily with freely available apps. There are a couple that I've been looking at. So, for instance, the National Rail Inquiries app, that's pretty accessible these days, and it's of course available across platform. And so if you need to plan a train journey, or indeed get an idea of the train station that you're closest to, a particularly nice feature if you're looking at an app while actually on a train journey and you want to get an idea of where you're close to, or maybe indeed arrived at, then an app like National Rail Inquiries can certainly help with that. Now then, help when you need it. So I guess one of the real challenges that any student will face when going into a new environment is that it's a new environment. How do I get to know where everything is? What is the layout of this room that I've just moved into? Or maybe it's a case of working out exactly what it is in a Freshers freebie goodie bag, or anything. It could be anything. There are all sorts of circumstances where a little bit of assistance could be could come in handy. And what's very interesting in terms of how this has developed recently is that there are now on-demand, freely available, in some cases freely available, services available that can actually help you with this. So if you've got a smartphone, you can actually call upon somebody to give you a description of your surroundings. Now, Be My Eyes, that is certainly the most well-known of these platforms. It's volunteer-driven, and the idea is that there is now a network of several million volunteers, all kind of based all over the world. And the idea with Be My Eyes is that as a blind person, you can sign up on any kind of smart device, and the app can then video connect you to one of these volunteers who can then get access to your camera and on your phone, and then use that to be able to give you a description of whatever it is that that you might want to know about your surroundings. Maybe you want some assistance identifying the right tin or something in a kitchen. Maybe you've got a new washing machine to get used to, and you want to get an idea of which buttons which. Well, volunteer might be able to help you with that, and certainly Be My Eyes is free, so well worth taking a look at that. Now, a service that isn't free but might be able to give you a bit more specialist help is Aira. Now, this is fairly recently launched here in the UK, and the idea behind Aira is that rather than connecting a blind person to a volunteer, what they do instead is connect you with a professional agent. So this is somebody who's actually been trained and gone through a fairly extensive induction and vetting process to ensure that they actually do have the skills to be able to describe the information that you need in the level of detail that you have requested it in. And of course, there's video calling friends and family. Now, anybody with a smart device can do this. There are video calling platforms that I'm sure many of you will already be well aware of on all of these smart devices these days, whether that's, say, something like WhatsApp or Google Duo, FaceTime. All of the above will let you perform a video call for free, assuming that you've got access to Wi-Fi or enough data to be able to cope with the connection. Right, well, that's a real kind of whistle-stop overview of the sorts of some of the sorts of things that could be useful, and I think we could touch on quite a few other things, but I think what I'll do for now is just pause, and we'll take a look at questions.
Yes, so the first question we have is, would these accessible technology apps be suitable for those with learning disabilities?
Really good question. Kind of goes without saying, really. Yes, no, certainly many of them would be. Now, clearly what we've been doing here is focusing on apps that are, or indeed technologies that have got a particular relevance to our partially sighted people, but certainly there is considerable overlap. Certainly some of the learning tools and read aloud features, for instance, that are now available across a lot of Microsoft apps could be particularly useful in some of these circumstances. So there are, but in terms of specifically, as I kind of mentioned earlier, I think one of the things I would definitely recommend you do is with whatever device that you have access to, go into the settings app and search for accessible or accessibility, because there will be a range of a whole host of options and facilities, features available in there that that could well be useful in all sorts of circumstances. So yeah, I'd certainly recommend that you do that.
Someone got in contact to say they work as a low vision practitioner. And is there any way they could help TPT?
Really good question. I guess I wonder if you have maybe some thoughts around this, Tara. I think that one thing certainly from the technology side that you could do is, if there's something, an app or a service or some kind of bit of kit or technology that you know that there are students who you are supporting at the moment that are finding useful, we'd love to hear about it. So yeah, please do feel free to get in touch with us at any time. What I haven't mentioned yet is the Vital Tech website. Again, it's also in the Word doc handout. Yeah, we're always keen to hear from anybody, any of you who's got experience of any of these technologies, as to what could be useful for blind and partially sighted people, because we do our best to keep on top of things, but it's so vast that there's always something new or something that somebody has got far more experience with than we do. So the only way that we can ensure the best possible coverage is if you tell us. Any thoughts?
Hi, thanks, Darren. And just to say, it's Tara here from the Student Support Service. Is absolutely what we're looking to do as TPT and our Student Support Service is to produce information and resources that are useful for professionals and for students. We'd be really interested to hear if there is something that we could be doing to work with, whether they're a low vision provider or anybody else that's supporting students through education. And we'd really love to hear from you, and we can look to co-producing materials and finding the answers for that information. So yes, we're absolutely up for partnership working. So thanks for that question.
So Ava has asked, which apps would you recommend most for getting around or using on bus journeys?
Oh, really good question. So one that I quite like, Ava, on buses is, and again, there are so many out there that certainly I find for me that it often depends on which one I found out about first. So there's an app I'm going to mention here. I'm not going to say that it's the best app. It just happens to be one that I've come across, because really there really are so many. In fact, these days, I think there are some public transport features actually built into the likes of Google Maps these days. But one that I like to use is called UK Bus Checker. And I guess the reason that I started with that is that I liked how it can kind of display a list of bus stops, and also lets you favorite bus stops. So on a couple of routes that I use fairly frequently, I've just favorited them so that I can check. You know, it might be that there's a time when I want to see what the bus times are for stops that isn't necessarily close to me at the time. So so something like UK Bus Checker can certainly do that. But you know, basically, there are so many out there. It just happens to be one that I've used.
Okay, Kevin has said he needs to purchase a new laptop for his son with VI. He said he's looking for a large screen and a lightweight laptop. Is there anything you would recommend?
Great question. I think a lot of the screen technology available in laptops now there are some really exciting innovations coming in now. What you will tend to find is that you know, this is very general, but the larger the screen, chances are the heavier the machine's going to be. So I think you know, we've got certainly in TPT we have experience of dealing with laptops with 13, 15 and 17-inch screens. There might be, I mean, 17 is the largest laptop screen size that I know of. That's not to say that there aren't any larger ones. But of course, one other thing that you can certainly do with any laptop is plug it into other screens. So for instance, if you're looking to try and get a balance right between say, wanting to have access to some kind of screen while out and about, but if it turns out that you're predominantly going to be doing most of your work in a specific area, say, at home on a desk, or whatever, and you don't necessarily need to move the screen around, then you might be better off with a laptop that has say a medium-sized screen plugged into a larger screen, or a larger multi-screen, or indeed it could be that you might want to get the largest screen possible for your laptop, and then whenever you're in a stationary position, avail of multi-monitor configurations anyway, or maybe you just want the whole screen to be on the machine you've got. I think what I would normally suggest with anything like this is go into a store and see what you can find out. I mean, certainly the machines that we've been using internally here at TPT recently have been mostly Dell machines, but most manufacturers of laptops will make them with a range of different screen sizes. So definitely with a big purchasing decision like this, as far as possible, try and get some hands-on time with it. Now, I appreciate that lighting in a store environment is something of which you have, as a consumer, no control over. But yeah, as far as possible, just if you have the ability to check out what's available in a local electronics store, it's well worth doing as well.
So Eleanor has two questions. The first is, what do students use to access books for further reading and research? The second is there any tech to use in a lab if someone is studying a science degree?
Brilliant questions. So let's look at the question of accessing books. So it doesn't necessarily have to be specialist technology, and one thing that can I mean, there are specialist options. I'll cover some of those, but actually there are now, more than ever before, textbooks available through ebook platforms. So, for instance, the Kindle store, the iBooks store. An advantage of an ebook, of course, is that once you've got access to that particular ebook and acquired it, you are then free to look at it and interact with it, view it, read it on whatever device you like, as long as it supports that particular store. So, for instance, as far as Kindles go, you've got Kindles with sort of I suppose e-ink, sort of more looking like paper, but still a display. Something like, say, Kindle Paperwhite, for instance, right up to something like a Fire tablet. And you've got with those, you've got Amazon make them up to a 10-inch screen size, and of course, because it's because we're looking at ebooks, they're not just necessarily available on just the platform that you've looked at them on. So taking the example of Kindle, there's any platform that you care to name: Windows, Mac, iPhone, iPad, Amazon Fire, Android. There's the web. There's a Kindle app for all of those things. So that would definitely be a starting point. Now, in terms of other technologies that might help with this, now it might be that maybe you've already got the book, maybe you've already managed to get it, or either through your educational institution or through relationship with a publisher, something like that. And you want to be able to make the most of the material that you've got access to. Now, there are some ways that you can do this, and options available to you depending on the format that it's been provided in. So, for instance, if you've got it as an EPUB file, and this would have to be a restriction-free file. So, unfortunately, you can't do this unless it's got all of the digital rights taken out of it. Now, that will depend on that will have to come from the publisher in many cases, but you are then basically free to interact with that material on whatever you like. Now, there are some devices, for instance, ebook readers, like say the Victor Reader range from Humanware, which can deal with EPUB files, so they can read them. And an advantage of going down a route like this, if you can, is that, or indeed with DAISY, indeed EPUB and DAISY are both very similar, is that you can browse and interact with the material very easily. So you've got navigation options to move by, depending on how the book's been structured, by different heading levels that might correspond with chapters or pages, and it's a lot easier to search for material as well. So a range of options that are available. We haven't even looked at anything around tech that can help with, say, scanning printed materials, and there's so much of it around now. I mean, smartphone cameras are good enough now that you can use a phone or a tablet to scan in paper if you need to. All sorts of apps. Indeed, there are free options such as the Notes app on an iPhone or an iPad, or Google Keep on Android, and also on iPhone and iPad as well, that have got scanning functions built into them. So it really depends on what you want to access, how you're able to access it, and where the material that you're looking to access has come from. In terms of looking at lab equipment, now, this isn't an area that we know a great deal about at the moment, but it's also definitely one worth checking if you're about to go through, say, Civil Student Allowance Needs Assessment. Definitely worth asking about that. I think there's all sorts of technology these days that can interface directly with computers or whatever device that you might be carrying around with you. And where that's the case, you can hopefully access whatever data that is coming from whatever it is that you need to plug in somewhere with an accessible app. But exactly what's available and what that looks like will, yeah, definitely worth checking that more when you go to your needs assessment, and indeed checking with your institution, you know, asking about the technology that they're already using as well, because it might be that what you have should, you know, may be able to interface with the systems that they're already using.
Great. Thanks, Darren. I'm just noticing that we're coming up to 2 o'clock, so I'll ask one more question, if that's okay with you.
Yeah.
Okay, so George has said, the Dolphin screen reader has been incorporated into a portable USB pen for portability. Does NVDA have this option?
It certainly does, and in fact you'll find that it's a lot easier, or it might be a lot easier with NVDA to actually do that, because whenever you get hold of the installer and you run it, you can just download it for free, as I say, from the NVDA website. It will actually ask you if you want to install NVDA onto the computer that that you're running the installer on, or if you want to create a portable version. And when you select that option, it will invite you to choose the folder that you want to put NVDA in. And so if you happen to have any kind of USB stick or storage device, or even a folder, you know, you could put it on your desktop if you wanted to. You can install it wherever you like and then run it from there on any supported Windows machine. So yes, absolutely you can. And say the big advantage with doing it with NVDA is that the software itself is free. So the only cost to you is in terms of the storage media that you'd want to put it on. And you know, USB mass storage devices, memory sticks, and so on are very reasonably priced these days.
Thank you so much, Darren. That has been so useful. I know that I've learned a lot, and my brain is buzzing with all the ideas about how we can take some of this information forward and share it with students. I'd just like to thank everybody for participating today and for all of your questions. We have not been able to get through all of the questions. There have been so many that have come through. So, but I can promise you that Darren will be taking those away over the next couple of days, and we'll be busily writing up some of the responses and including links if need be to any resources. We will send you around a link to this webinar, as I said, which will go up on our website, complete with the presentations, links to lots of different useful information and answers to all of your questions. So thank you again for participating today. I really hope that you found it useful, and we look forward to meeting you again at another webinar, or even an in-person event maybe might happen at some point. So thank you again, and I wish you all a lovely afternoon. Thank you.